Hello, survivors, and welcome to Tier Death Experience, the first aid spray show where we rank various aspects of the survival horror genre. My name is Sai, and joining me on this episode, I have, for the making their TDE debut, Mr. Serial Box 64, Jordan Sugru.
Hello.
And I also have Mr. KDB, Kelsey.
Greetings, Earthlings.
This is going to be an interesting one. We've done a lot of music discussion in the past, so some of these opinions have been floating around anyway, I guess, where we've talked about soundtracks and talked about save rooms, but I think save rooms are... If we were to go, what makes Resident Evil music different from everything else? Save rooms is certainly an aspect everyone wants to go to. It's certainly something that people have expressed desire to hear us talk about some more. So rather than have a normal conversation and be nice and friendly about it, I guess we decided we were going to argue about it. So we're here to rank every save room theme in the series, from Resident Evil 1 to Resident Evil Village, specifically save rooms, otherwise we really would be here for a long time. So these are just save room themes, not results screens or anything like that. So there is about probably a dozen or so, probably less, to get through. So yeah, if there's anything you feel like we're missing, we had to be kind of like a little bit more restrictive about what suits a save room theme more, because once you open that door, it gets very complicated. So we kept it nice and strict. Okay, I guess we'll dive right in. Go right back. We're going to do this in release-ish order, remakes included, along the way. So Resident Evil 1 to start with. I think we're going to be going to like clips as reminder clips. So Resident Evil 1. Oh boy, yeah, so this is going to be a really hard thing in general to talk about save room themes, I think, as a general concept and one by one. So, Kelsey, I'm going to give you the honour of kicking us off with this one. What are your thoughts on the original save room theme?
So, you mentioned how we've kind of talked about save room themes a little bit before on easily my favourite thing we do, now that's what I call survival horror. And I did already kind of touch on my feelings towards Resident Evil 1. And for me, if I'm completely honest, kind of like when we did the covers, the front cover was iconic, the save room theme is iconic, but it just lacks, for me, it's just way too safe sounding, it lacks a bit of edge, and there's going to be a theme today, I think, with the ones that I rank highly, that they've got like that slightly darker edge behind it, rather than just feeling like a blanket wrapped around you. And for me, this one feels way too much like a blanket. It's a nice piece of music, like the harp is good and stuff like that. But yeah, when I just think about everything we've got to look at today, this it's just like, oh yeah, it's the save room theme from the original. It's not not near the top. It's not anywhere near the top for me. Do you want us to give our rankings now at the end of our spiel, or are we waiting?
If you're happy to give you a preliminary idea.
So yeah, like
if this was your tier list.
Yeah, it gets points for being the iconic number one, but I went back and forth, and honestly, I'm tempted to start with just this being a high, the highest. It's the only one, a solid B.
Wow, okay, interesting. My first note, I think, with this was, it's an S rank. But it's so difficult because when we talk about things like this, and when we talk about stuff where it's like going through the series, it's really hard to sort of decouple that nostalgia factor, isn't it? Like, that's obviously a big thing. And I think in general, we do pretty well with that. Like you talked about when we ranked box art, you know, Resident Evil 1, for very good reason, was not, let's put it right at the top because it's the old one and I like it. This is not the goofy box art. I take what you're saying about a lack of threat. That's certainly something that, if that's what you're looking for, this isn't going to do much for you. But I don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard for me to not go, this is nigh on perfect. Jordan, what's your take on the original?
I mean, it's a great start for the series. I think like it sets the tone, and I think it's actually got like the best balance of like relief and despair, which I think works to its favor. Then that it becomes the blueprint for the rest of the series.
Yeah,
I think there are better themes out there, but I think it is owing to this theme being so solid from the start that they get that kind of encouragement to run with it. In particular, I like the sort of the soft wailing element, like throughout the theme. It kind of gets built upon in the remakes version. But here it was really sort of impactful for that kind of strange sort of unsettling feeling because it
Eerie,
is
isn't
meant
it?
to be. Yeah, it's throughout a lot of these save rooms, they will feel like places where you really shouldn't stay that long. But in particular, it's a very haunting quality, and it works very well. But yeah, I think that for myself, I would have to give it a B just because I think it's a little bit too understated. It's a high B, like on my own personal ranking, but yeah, I'd still give it a B.
Okay, that's fair. It is tough because for me, like, it's so representative of Resident Evil in general, just the first game and the whole franchise, that I think quite highly of it. Because this is going to be so hard, and we sort of touched on this before we started recording, and it's like, personally, for me, I feel like that D bar shouldn't even get touched. Like, I don't know if there's anything quite that bad, but we'll see. Because obviously we've got to cascade this right. It can't just be, all front loaded. So I'm happy to put it in B to start with, and then we'll see where it stacks up against everything else. Because
Yeah.
we need a baseline at least. So
Si, didn't you say that this was your wake-up tone in the morning?
yes, this has been
Yeah,
my
there you
alarm
go.
for a very long time, and I get that.
This
Like,
is my point. It's
Yeah,
far
but
too
that's-
safe.
that's what you. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe Resident Evil 1's super duper scary, and you need complete serenity. That's definitely a subject.
I'm curious how like your day starts, like with a theme like that, like to sort of like set the tone. How do you feel? Do you feel like you're ready to take on the day?
Yeah,
Do you feel like you maybe need to conserve, whatever you're taking out with you on that day?
that's right. I get up, I open my big chest, and I go, right, what can I afford to take with me outside of this room when I go and get my breakfast? I'm like, I can only carry so much.
First thing when I wake up is I usually make like a mad grab for wherever my glasses are. For you, it seems to be an ink ribbon.
Yes, of course it is. You gotta live it.
I got to be honest, I thought Jordan was going to go high. You were really talking it up, and I thought, so I said S. Jordan's going to probably go S, and I said B, and you're like, no, straight in with a B. I like it.
I really did think about it for a while because it is a memorable theme. I give it that.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah, this series goes places with its save room themes that I really enjoy, and so yeah, B. This is like true neutral. I think it's
Yeah.
a really good theme. Almost all of the songs are really good, but that's the thing. Ultimately, sometimes something that can be really great still ends up being a B, just on this scale.
Okay. Well, that brings us nicely then on to our first remake, which is the Resident Evil 1 remake version of the same track. I'm going to start off with saying this is quite a nice reproduction of it. It's fairly straightforward. It's, we're jumping from PlayStation to GameCube. So we get all of this nice, lush, extra levels of sound that we can do with it. The instrumentation choice is nice. I like that. And this might be the nostalgia factor again, for something about it for me that just isn't quite as strong. Kelsey, you're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, you said exactly what I was going to say. I think the points this wins is it's based on fidelity. It's like it's a higher quality, kind of better sounding version of the original, but then kind of stylistically and just how that is for me as a Resident Evil fan, it just makes it boring. And there's a couple of we're going to get to the other remakes, and they do sort of some extra little bits with theirs. This one doesn't. It's just basically a reproduction with higher fidelity. I wouldn't rank it higher. I put the other one at B. I wouldn't rank it higher than that because it's just the same. Oh, it sounds crisper, but it's like that doesn't make it more iconic. It's just the same thing.
Jordan, what's your take on this?
It is pretty damn close to the original. I think where it does ramp up is more in that haunting quality, and it does it without sort of piling on the instruments as well. this one kind of feels a bit more cold and damp compared to
sure.
the previous theme. I got a real sense of place, and that might just be more for me being more familiar with Remake than I am with the original Resident Evil. Um, so there's probably a little bit of bias there, but I think it is a tasteful expansion on the original. It's not trying to deviate too much, and it's not trying to sort of dilute it. Yeah, it's an additional sort of enhancement. It can be a little bit sort of unmistakable, hard to distinguish from the original, but there are differences there. It's just that they're more subtly and sort of in the background. Obviously, the only problem is that it's kind of I consider the original theme a bit understated compared to the rest of the series, and obviously this sticks very close to that, so it also remains understated and can't really escape that. But it's perfect for the remake, suits it very well, and I do enjoy it. So it's a B as well.
Interesting. I don't. It's difficult to criticize it because you're right. Like, it is just, hey, here's the high fidelity version. I don't know if I put it in B though. I feel like it probably deserves to go down a tier, or is that just me?
So I put low B or C even is what I put. So I started with the B, but you don't have to convince me to put it in C. I think Jordan's made great points, and it does sound better, and those elongated notes and stuff like. But I just think, oh well, they just did this before, and I just think, yeah, it was too much retread for me, which is where it loses its rank.
Okay, cool. All right, let's put it in C. Plonk. There it goes. Which brings us on. Now we're jumping back to the PlayStation for the original version of Resident Evil 2. This is another tricky one again with the nostalgia. But I think even nostalgia aside, this is a really high-ranking one. It's a lot of people's favourite. I think it has possibly the strongest melody of the lot of them. It's incredibly memorable, and a lot of these save room themes are very short loops. They don't need to be anything more than they actually are. But for such a short piece of music, it's incredibly memorable. It's incredibly iconic. This one is certainly. I think this is going to land higher than what we put already on there. Whether it gets into S rank, I guess, is up to a unanimous decision. Jordan, how do you feel about Resi 2?
Well, this is the safe room theme for me, basically. Spoiler, it is getting an S rank. But yeah, I think it obviously it's incredibly nostalgic. But I think it's also just all around really solid. It does so much with a very little very short loop basically. And I especially like the very thumping low piano notes. So it really sort of drives it home that while this is meant to be the safest place in the game, you're really not meant to stay here too long because there's lots of danger lurking just outside that door. And yeah, it's very strong for me. I think the only criticism that I'd give it is that I think it could loop better. It kind of goes through sort of two phases, and then the track starts again. And I think it's the only one. It's weird for how much I love it. It just it doesn't necessarily loop as naturally as a lot of the rest of them. Where sometimes it's quite hard to distinguish when it loops. So that's the only thing that I would put against it. But it's a nitpick. I still consider this S rank and a fantastic theme.
Yeah, I think actually you're convincing me more and more about the placement for RE1 at the moment as well, because when you think about what makes up this save room theme and that one in terms of how few pieces of instrumentation and stuff like that that's actually going on, it's about the same kind of number of instruments, which is like two, a piano and string, whereas RE1 was, those eerie sort of long howling notes and harp or whatever it is. But this, it feels like it does a lot more with those true instruments, and as that gives a far stronger tone. Kelsey, it seems like you may well be in agreement with this as well, and this is kind of what you were talking about with Threat as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like you just said, with two instruments, it's just stunningly well executed, and in the feeling that it gets across with those two things. The piano, it's like an angelic piano, but then those really somber like synth pads in the background, and yeah, like those synth pads, they just sound straight out of Terminator 2, and it's like the piano is dark, but kind of makes you feel safe, but then it has those pads behind it, which just has that lack of hope, and it's really. We mentioned, we tried to be honest about our nostalgia. It's no secret RE2 is my favorite game. It might maybe surprise people what I rank as my highest save theme today, and it may be this one, it may be not. I don't know. We're going to kind of find out as we go along. It's definitely an S rank for me. I could kind of talk about this for ages, but yeah, it's so. I just remember this piece of music all the time when I think about Resident Evil. It does the job so well for what it is, and the loop thing that Jordan mentioned, I'd never really considered that, but he's right, and yeah, that can be a criticism towards it. And I think they were still discovering what they could do with the music at this stage with RE2. Everything was being ramped up, and so there was obviously a lot of experimentation going on as well. But yeah, just incredible save room theme, S rank, no doubt. Yeah, get it up there.
Nice and unanimous. I like it. Very civil. It's good. It's time to get a little bit maybe possibly controversial then, with the second remake, of course, for Resident Evil 2. I'm not going to start this one off because, as we talked about before, we've discussed a lot of these in Now That's What I Call Survival Horror, and I specifically chose Resident Evil 2 Remake as one of the games that I wanted to talk about. So this appeared in that listing. So I've certainly said my piece. Kelsey, you joined me for that. So Jordan, I'm going to go to you again to start with this one. What do you think of this sort of quite recent reinvention of this classic theme?
Well, the first word that I put down in my notes was awful. I get what they're trying to go for. In fact, I feel like they're really kind of like piling on the misery with this. I don't know if I mentioned it previously for Resident Evil 2, but Resident Evil 2's theme really captures that collapse of Raccoon City, and this does capture some of that, and as I say, really makes it sound even more emotional. It really makes the sort of desolation sort of settle in. But for what they're going for, I thought it was still sort of a big miss. Because what it is, in effect, is the theme is the core theme of Resident Evil 2. Same theme is stretched out, it's drowned in reverb, and I just think it's too soft. So it's just a very supplementary arrangement. I don't think you get much from this if you've never heard this song before. I think this only really makes a big impact if you know it from the original game and you have nostalgia for it, and it's a nice rendition in that respect, I guess. But it just kind of it ended up striking me as those kind of like emotional sweet mixes on YouTube where it'll be like Darth Vader's theme, emotional mix, and it's 25 minutes long, and it's the same theme, but it's just stretched out and with soft piano, and it doesn't have the sort of the same impact as a full brand new arrangement would be, because it's really just trying to pull on the strings of nostalgia, I guess, and maybe a little bit too manipulative with the emotion. I don't know. It just this didn't hit me right in any kind of way. I think it fits the tone of Remake, but that's about it. Other than that, no. And I've completely skirted the fact that you can't really even listen to this in the game. But that is not part of the main criticism. It's just that even if I heard it in the game, typically, it just doesn't have the same impact.
It's an important distinction, I think. You're right. The sort of in-game version of the save room theme, you sort of get a bit of a plinky plonk and then it completely fades out and that's it. But there is the model screen viewer version, which is the one I talked about when we discussed the soundtrack. To your point, I think you said there that it does work well as part of Remake 2's soundtrack, which was what I was kind of... My major swinging point is that whilst I can see some of the issues that people might have with it, it does feel very at home with Remake 2's entire soundtrack. It's got all that long, drawn-out, ghostly, very, very reverby, like you said, very strangely hollow kind of music sound. I think it fits really well with Remake 2's soundtrack. As a save room theme, you kind of convinced me, actually, that it's certainly not one of the best. Kelsey, how do you feel about this?
It's funny because I'm aligning with both of you, and I'm ranking it higher. I feel like I'm going to rank it higher. I really like it, but then I have in my notes like some of the exact things Jordan said, but I've sort of I've got other things around it that make me think it's good. So this is what I'm talking about when the Remake 1 save theme just did nothing for me. It just redid the original. This one, at least they tried to do something. It's got those echoes of the original theme. They're there. But I did write, maybe it is too subtle, which is kind of what Jordan was saying. There's not a lot there. But I also wrote, it works for the modern game and in the context of Remake 2, which is kind of exactly what you're saying. I do think it's possibly missing like an extra layer or an extra sound here and there or something, but it's got the right texture and tone for me. And listening to this in-game, maybe not as effective. Listening to it with headphones on and just refreshing myself with it yesterday, yeah, I really, really liked it. It weirdly sounds a lot like RE7's save theme, if you listen to them one after the other, which I thought was quite interesting. And so, yeah, in the context of the game, the fact that they tried to do a remake version rather than just redoing the original, it wins points. And I wrote I'm tempted to rank A, but I mean I guess I could be talked down if because I sort of agree with those criticisms of it being too subtle. So yeah, I really like it.
I'm laughing because this is why we have face cams, because as soon as you said that, both Jordan and I, like, our eyebrows went
I don't know if I mentioned in my point, but I gave this a D, by the way.
Gave it the D.
But
okay,
for what it's worth, Kelsey, you've made some very strong points. It's not necessarily changing the D, but I think it's very strong points.
It's weird because I agree with the criticisms, and maybe it's just I love Remake 2, and I think but maybe it is just a B. But I don't know if I'd go C or D. I think it gets the points for trying. It makes such a good effort compared to a couple that we're going to get to in a minute. I think
you probably did the right thing actually listening to it on its own, rather than me, where I was really purposely putting it in Resident Evil 2 Shadow.
Yeah.
So I think it obviously can have some points where it really stands on its own, but it really has to be separated from the original, I guess.
So looking at where we're at with the tier, where I personally would like to place this is probably... It's between the original and Remake 1. I think it's better than Remake 1 for the reason that you said, Kelsey, is that it tries to do something different with it. Even if it doesn't necessarily always succeed, it's interesting to listen to because they've gone a different route with it. Whether that makes it high C or low B, I don't know. Right now I'm not sure it matters all that much, but to me it's more important that it is better than Remake 1. That's how I feel anyway.
Yeah, Jordan, how do you feel about that?
Would you concede a D for a high C, or?
I think it's got to get pulled up by an average anyway, so it's not ending up in D. But...
All right. So how do we? Is that fine? Do we feel okay about that?
Yeah,
I'll accept that.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the PlayStation 1 once more, one final time for Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Kelsey, I'm going to throw this to you to start because you handled the Resident Evil 3 soundtrack before, and I want to see. I'm very curious because what I did in preparation for this was re-listen to our discussions on these themes that we've covered, because I was curious to see what we said in the context of the soundtrack specifically. And you said some mighty interesting things about Free From Fear. Do you remember where you placed it on your top 10?
I can't remember where I ranked it, but I mean, thinking about it again now, it must have been pretty high.
It was number 2.
It was number 2.
Number
yeah,
2,
because
only behind a song from Resident Evil 2, by the way. I just want to point that out.
behind front hall. Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is what? So this is 1998 and 99. The hits, they just keep on coming and coming. Resident Evil 2 save theme, Resident Evil 3 save theme. Resident Evil 2 is my favourite game, and I think I might have said in the 3 survival horror music we did, I think this is the best save theme in the series, and I hadn't really realised that until I did that episode with you, and I really kind of listened to this properly and had to think about it. Dr. Dre level dark pianos really hitting harder than, because the RE2 has those dark pianos. This just cranks it up again. Synth pads that are arguably better than the one from RE2. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Resident Evil fan that doesn't think that this is at least a very, very highly rated, very good one. And I'm not saying those people aren't out there, that's fine. But if they want to live in a world of lies and fantasy, that's up to them. Yeah, for my money, this is S rank, and I think this is possibly top dog. That's where I stand.
Okay, that's fair. I think my reaction to it at the time was it's really, really hard to pick an outright favourite, but sort of gun to your head kind of moment. It's got potential to be the best. Certainly, it's everything that 2 did right, even more so. It isn't complex, but it's certainly more wandering and more stressful, and it feels even more like the remains of Raccoon City in music form. Jordan, how do you feel about RE3's save room theme?
Those menacing low notes are back.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, going from Resident Evil 2's theme to Resident Evil 3's theme, yeah, it just kind of felt like, fitting into an old pair of comfy shoes or slippers or something like that. It's like, yeah, I know exactly where I am with this. It's a very strong theme. I actually put it like as A in my ranking. It's very melancholy, but it's also like confrontational. It's got a different edge to it to Resident Evil 2.
Completely.
Which obviously is quite sort of a faithful reflection on the game itself and sort of the nature of that game. That it works great. Especially again those low piano notes. It really does feel like Nemesis is looming large in the picture, and I think that works really, really well for it. It almost branches into something that is, I don't know how people might take this, but it almost branches into something that I could hear in a Max Payne game. I don't know if it's just this is sort of like late 90s, and my memories of early 2000s were Max Payne. I hear this theme and I just kind of feel like I could have heard this in one of like the comic panel cutscenes or something like that. It's got a real sort of looming quality to it. It actually loops better than Resident Evil 2's theme as well. So I took that into note. Yeah. So it's very close to Resident Evil 2. It really is. I think the only thing that kind of sets it apart is that this isn't as memorable to me. But I mean, it still sticks in my head. It's just when I'm looking at all the other themes and trying to make a distinction between A and S, that's what it comes down to. But it is so good anyway.
So, Sai, you said, I think, so what this is, because I understand exactly what Jordan's saying, you said how the RE2 one probably has the best melody of all the same things, and I think you're completely right. And then Jordan said this one's more confrontational, which is also completely right. And then just for me, that's what makes this one stronger. It's just more mature as a piece of music and just has more to it. But obviously, I don't think I'm going to argue with anyone that says the RE2 one is nicer to listen to, because it completely is. But I think for what these save room themes are supposed to do, RE3 has the feeling there and the texture there more than RE2 does. Even if I enjoy listening to the RE2 one more, it sounds nicer, but RE3 is way more powerful for me.
Yeah, this is a really hard decision, I think, and this is a conversation that I've had in my head with myself many times. Which one is better, just between these two? These are very much some of the top dogs at the lot. It's really tough because I suppose it depends what you want out of a save room theme, and apparently we want to be horribly threatened by it, right? Because we put RE1, which is nice and soft, down in B, and 2 and 3 right up the top. As you said, it gets even more confrontational as it goes. It is the most well developed tonally, and it fits the game so well. Is this the best so far?
For me, it is, and RE2 is my favorite game.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I think we might have to commit to that decision.
We can do our little review later on.
We absolutely will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so let's hop ahead to the last remake on this list, which of course is Resident Evil 3 Remake. Biggest point for me before I throw this to someone else is we talked about Remake 1 not deviating enough. This one is... Jordan, you used the word awful earlier to describe Remake 2. I don't know what that means this is. What do you think of this one? Because I think this is... there is a D on this list. It's this.
Okay. I actually think this is a very nice arrangement. It gets a C for points I'll bring up, but I think overall it is, compared to Remake 2, a little bit more palatable. In part because it keeps most of the spirit of the original, and it doesn't try and sort of, cheap me out with a slowed down version, too much reverb or anything like that. It's largely the same theme, and I can appreciate it better because it functionally sounds closer to it and not stretched out or drowned in some kind of hollow theming in the background. But it's the problems that I have with it is that the more confrontational looming elements that we just spoke about are dropped for the most part.
Yeah.
So that's a minus for me because I thought that they were the strongest parts of that theme. And ironically, even though it is better than Remake 2, it's actually less suitable in tone, in my opinion, based on the type of game that Remake 3 is. I felt like this was an opportunity where they probably could have injected a bit more reflective Jill Carlos badassery into the theme.
Sure.
Just because ultimately you don't play Resident Evil 3, the remake, in the same way that you play Resident Evil 2, the remake. They're very different beasts in that fashion, and this was an opportunity for the save theme, I think, to reflect that a little bit more, and it just wasn't quite there. So it's a C, but it's certainly less of an issue for me to sort of credit than Remake 2. So yeah, it's a little bit of an improvement.
Kelsey?
This is like a draft version of RE3's save theme. If you looked at the file name on the computer, it's like save theme version 1.5_whip or something like that. I think Jordan's hit the nail on the head. So much is missing from it. It's more of a remake of the original than RE2 Remakes 1 was. That's a long thing to say. But they just don't do enough with it for me. And it doesn't top the original in any way. It doesn't add anything to the remake. It felt more just like, hey, look, there's that little melody from Remake. Right. Remember that? And then they did nothing else with it. And so it loses points for effort in a big way. Gets points for existing, which is, I think, kind of like sums up some people's feelings about RE3 Remake in general. So, I think we need to be brutal with some of these. And I also did put this at a D. So I know Jordan said C. I think it's living in the shadow of the original. Yeah, whereas the remake one, which we've got in C, was a redo. At least it's kind of just sounded good, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's fine. This kind of takes stuff away from the original theme, and yeah, it's really down there. It's a D for me.
Yeah, that's my problem with it, is that it's Remake 2 may have tried its own thing to whatever degree. This doesn't, you're right, it doesn't feel like it tried anything. It feels like, give me a pat on the head, look, I'm here, because of all the complaints about Remake 2 soundtrack not referencing the original as much or being a bit more absent and that kind of thing. Then there's some great stuff in Remake 3 soundtrack that does recreate pieces of music from the original game. This just feels incredibly lazy to me, to be honest, and it's missing a lot of what made it great. Like you guys have said, the lack of confrontation is a big issue. It's definitely the worst one out of the lot so far that we've covered for me. I could put it at the bottom of C, but I'd feel more comfortable if we just kicked it right to the curb.
Yeah, let's be brutal.
Okay.
It's a shame because I don't hate Remake 3. I know lots of people do.
No, I love the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's just it's just not the same from theme apparently. All right, okay. That is the remakes all out of the way. So let's jump ahead to an interesting one indeed, Resident Evil Code Veronica. I feel like this one gets talked about quite a lot, actually. It's either one that people have very little to say about, or people will sort of die on the hill of this one as being their favourite, which is interesting to me. It's definitely unique, and after how we talked about how threatening Resident Evil 3 was, you don't get much of that in this one. Kelsey, what do you think of the Code Veronica save room theme?
this sounds like the end credits to a Disney Sega Mega Drive game. You know, when you've completed the game and it shows like Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck asleep in their bed and the credits are rolling. Yeah, there's a lot of problems I have with this one. It blows my mind that this is what came after 2 and 3. You know, those incredible pieces of music, and then they did this one next. It's too soft. Those twinkly notes are just, like I say, Disney vibes that I do not need in Resident Evil. Yeah, it's kind of dull. And I love Code Veronica. I don't get that edge that I wanted, you know, that I mentioned at the start. I don't want to be able to sleep to a save room theme. This, yeah, I've not stopped for a breather from BOWs with this. I'm getting ready to tuck myself in with this one. So yeah, it's, you know, it's technically it's fine, but it's just, yeah, it doesn't give me any of the emotion that I want. Feels completely out of place with the game. Sounds a bit music boxy, I guess, which is a sort of recurring theme. But yeah, this could potentially be another D for me. I wrote C/D. That's
Okay.
how I feel.
Fair. Okay, interesting. Jordan, what's your take on this one?
I quite dig it, like as a song. I think it's quite nice to actually sort of listen to, and nice as a loop. But it's not much of a save room theme for me. Is probably the biggest point. It's so funny because in my notes I also liken it to credits. So as soon as Kelsey mentioned it, it's like this is like credits, huh? Of a Mega Drive game. I think it sounds like a like credits music that you would get for like a neutral ending. Like you didn't
Yeah.
get the best ending. You missed some objectives. You let a main character die or something like that. So it's not comforting. And I think if I did fall asleep to this, I'd probably have some unsettling dreams because it does have some kind of undercurrent to it that's just not quite right. I think it's down to that winterish twinkle, which I actually like because I think it probably suits the game well. But yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, coming to me now, it kind of feels like it could sound like some kind of Lynchian theme, like it could have been in Twin Peaks. Like
Fair.
it's not sweet. It's kind of like some kind of twisted version of sweet. bittersweet even. And it just it works for Resident Evil, just not as a save room theme. This is the last thing that I would want to be listening to, well, maybe not the last thing based on this list, in a save room theme. So yeah, I gave it a B, but maybe this discussion is going to end up pushing me towards putting it down to a C.
I actually think I'm in a different universe with this one. I quite like it because there's only, with RE3 being so scary and grim as it was, there's only so far you can go.
Because you're a wimp, is what you're saying.
I was like, yeah, finally a save room thing. Whoo! Yeah. No, I just like that the wheels fall off of something if you just keep trying to pile more on, and they could have gone even more over the top, daunting with it. But I think it's good that they didn't, and I think that it suits the location that it didn't as well. Like, you're talking about it being a weird, twisted kind of suite. Well, this took place on the island of, the Ashford family and all the strangeness that goes on between Alfred and Alexia and that kind of thing. And it does make me think of those characters. It's very lush and it almost sounds maybe a little bit royal and stuff like that. So I think it suits the game very well. I get your points that it maybe it doesn't sound like a save room theme as we know it. Maybe it needed some change of instruments or just a little bit more threat in it. But yeah, music is subjective. Sometimes it's hard to talk about. I don't think it's nearly as bad. I will concede it's certainly nowhere near the top. I would probably place this one at the end of B, maybe top of C personally.
Yeah, I knew I was being harsh, but I think, yeah, coming off the back of Remake 3 like 2 games ago, I was just like, what is this rubbish?
It's really difficult because obviously we all did the same thing when we were preparing for this and listened to all these save room themes, one after the other. So that can obviously change your feelings as well. When you put this amongst other save room themes, you do kind of go, oh, it's okay, I guess. So Jordan, whereabouts in the tier list would you drop this?
I mean, if I was revising my rating, then I'd probably say a C.
Okay. Kelsey, how do you feel about a C, somewhere in the C?
Yeah, I'll go with C. Like, I was maybe too harsh with D. I get what you were saying about, you mentioned the royal stuff and the Ashfords, and I can make that connection with the twinkliness. But I don't know, just again, I go back to me I prefer the edge, and I think there can be other music in the game that has that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm fine with a C. As far as where, the bottom. But up to you.
I
would put it at the top. So Jordan, where does it go for you?
I guess I'd put it between the two remakes and C, I guess.
That's lucky then, isn't it?
Right down the middle.
All right, okay, that's interesting. Do you know what? This is not what I was expecting this to look like at all. So I'll give it that much. I mean, maybe other than the S ranks, that felt like a given. But okay, let's move on to the prequel, Resident Evil 0. Cool. Jordan, why don't you kick us off with this one? How do you feel about Resident Evil 0's save room theme?
This is, in my opinion, a very weak theme. It's very simplistic. It doesn't set much tone emotionally. And it's the kind of song that you would remake because I don't think this is complete. I listened to it and I'm like, okay, finish your song now. Come on. And no, it just loops. It goes right back. So, not only did this get a D on my ratings, it is dead last. Like,
ouch.
I think this is the worst. And this isn't even. Oh, it's worse, but it's still really good. No, it's just I don't like it.
Okay, fair. I appreciate where you're coming from. In that it is very simple.
But you are wrong.
No. Actually, I wouldn't go as far as D. For me, it's certainly not Remake 3 bad. It's serviceable. It has its own identity, but I don't think it has a strong enough identity. Kelsey, where are you looking at for Zero?
I think, yeah, because D for me feels like the unfinished, the rubbish, and Jordan mentioned this sounds like an unfinished track. I guess it kind of does. I mean, I had it ranked C. Again, just too soft for me, not a lot to it. I have next to no attachment to RE0 as well, which probably doesn't help it. I think I've only completed the game once. I've played it a few times, stop and start, but I don't know. I think I spent a lot of time thinking about this one. It was quite tricky. I was like, is it bad? Is there something to it? Like, weirdly something creepy about it, which means it's not a D for me, but yeah, it lacks so much else. So yeah, it's definitely one of the weaker ones. I can't see it being anywhere near B. Bottom C, I would say maybe not. Maybe it's ahead of Remake 1 because, yeah, Remake 1 just annoys me because it didn't try anything. At least this one tried something, like you said, has its own identity. It's a difficult one, to be honest. Yeah, next to no attachment to it, but just it left me feeling almost nothing.
I like the sort of like second melody that comes in on the horns at the end there. That's my favourite part that stands out the most to me. That feels very Resident Evil. But it's interesting because it's got that kind of simplicity that you get from the earlier save room themes that are just a couple of instruments. But it's just, it feels like it's missing something. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you completely. I would put it below Code Veronica, above Remake 1. Jordan, you're the one that's venomously...
It can go on C, but it has to be dead last.
I'm not going to argue that.
I can deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. That's my bargaining.
Wow, that C tier is looking mighty popular right now. Okay.
Did we expect that much activity in C tier?
No.
When we started off?
Didn't we say at the start we think the quality is generally quite high?
With the exception of my S tier on my rankings, there was only one pick for C, so it was a very quiet category on my ranking. Now it's the busiest one.
Yeah.
Apparently, save room themes, purely average. Who knew? All right, speaking of purely average, Resident Evil Dead Aim.
Segway.
Yeah, that is perhaps a take on the game, but is not misrepresentative of how I feel about its save room theme, let's put it that way. I actually feel quite similar to the save room theme of Dead Aim, how Steve feels about Code Veronica, is that so many people go on about how underrated it is. It can't be that underrated if everyone's talking about it. And so many people say that Dead Aim's save room theme is supremely underrated, that I would actually argue that no, in fact, this is overrated for me. Kelsey, you're nodding away. I like to see it. How do you feel about the Dead Aim save room theme?
Completely agree. Like, I don't think I see people praising this, and I'm just like, what? Like this, I've dubbed this percussionless arcade fighting game character select screen. And like, Dead Aim is just a weird game generally, and Notion is only enhanced by the fact there's basically two notable pieces of music in the game. I guess this save room theme and the soap opera music that opens the game, and this piece of music is just borderline lifeless in like not a good way. And so much of Dead Aim didn't land, and we tried to be quite nice about it when I know we're not analysing the games today, but I don't despise Dead Aim. I think it had some good ideas, was maybe too ahead of its time, but the music doesn't enhance the playthrough at all. This sort of just odd noise of a theme doesn't really make me feel scared. It feels more like a migraine, to be honest. And yeah, this is another D for me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I would agree. It's weird. I don't understand how people can lump so much praise on what is essentially just 3 notes.
Yeah.
It's pretty much all it is over and over again. Like we talked about the beauty of simplicity. No. This is too far. Jordan, how do you feel about Dead Aim? Are we going to be arguing about this one?
Here it comes.
B.
Okay.
Like the underachieving kid at school, I'm going to change that grade meticulously from a D to a B. No, this one surprised me. Maybe it was because I didn't have any expectations for Dead Aim. I kind of, to be honest, when I first saw the list, I was like, Dead Aim has a save room theme?
Yeah.
Because I really don't, I'll be honest, I don't know enough about Dead Aim. Only that it does stick out like a sore thumb when you're looking at all of these other core titles. But yeah, I was sort of surprised by it. I take all the points of criticism for this. It is incredibly minimal, and obviously it is so jarringly 2000s in its sort of electronic synth sounds. But that scratches an itch of mine because I like vaporwave, and this kind of feels in the realms of vaporwave. It sounds like something that maybe Blank Banshee would have like sampled at some point. But obviously the points against it is that it's neither scary nor unnerving, despite what YouTube comments will have you believe. I do not necessarily take anything emotionally from this.
Yeah.
It's just a cool theme. It maybe sounds like something that you might hear on a dystopian weather channel. But besides that, I don't have anything else that it pulls from me. And obviously the biggest issue is that it's not a good safe room theme. That probably doesn't even need to be said. It just kind of, it sounds like a menu. If it was going to be in any place for the music, it would be in the menu, or I guess a fighter selection theme, I guess. But it is distinct enough for me to like it a lot. Like it might just be the fact that it is such a black sheep among the rest of these themes in the list that when you listen to it, it's so distinct that you're like, oh, actually, there's something to it. Fair enough. It may not necessarily stack up if it was with a bunch of very electronic and synth like themes and not up against piano and strings and synth pads and stuff. But I can't give it any less than a B in my opinion, just because it's distinct enough. And I don't know, maybe I don't know what Capcom were thinking when they made this theme. I'm kind of glad that they did, just because it's interesting to look at now and listen to. But yeah, as a save room theme, you wouldn't really want to listen to it.
It's definitely the most different one so far, and potentially out of the whole list, it sticks out like a sore thumb, like you say, whether that's good or bad. Obviously, your mileage may vary. I agree, despite the fact that we've gone hard on it a little bit, I agree that it is bold, and it's a cool sample that has potential, but admittedly to me feels unfinished, as we talked about with some of the other ones. It does feel like there actually could have been something cool out of this if it had been built on a little bit, maybe. But as a save room theme, as you guys have both said, it doesn't really do much emotionally. It doesn't seem to fit. So yeah, it's a tough one. Go ahead. Go on.
That Jordan saying B, it's like we're putting this in the same category as Resident Evil 1.
I can't. I won't abide by that.
I'm not sure I can agree to that either. I get the points about how it is as a sample and the music and the genre that it is. It is quite nice, and I'm kind of into that stuff as well. But yeah, there's this was like a student project to me. It was very much just that game has like no budget, as we've commented on before, and I don't think the music had any budget, because the opening track, I guess, is a stock piece of music they bought from somewhere. I don't know if that was composed for the game. And then they've just gone, oh, we need some save room music. Warm, warm, warm. And then there we go, that'll do. Because they had no budget.
This theme all along has actually been some production music that they've just taken off the shelf from some, library elsewhere.
Yeah.
That would explain a lot.
I agree. It can't be in the same tier as RE1. That's just insulting.
Where's it going?
I mean, we know where it's going. It's going in C somewhere, isn't it? Apparently, where everything goes. Where in C though is the argument. It's tough. I could argue it goes above 0 for being interesting. Would it go higher than Remake 1?
No, and I don't even really like Remake 1. I think it has to be that low C. I mean, zero. Yeah, 0 is the one that gave me no kind of emotional thing. I wouldn't even put it above 0, but if we need to average it out,
that's fair. I'm still trying to figure out what sort of like argument here. Like, it does something different as opposed to Remake 1, which we've talked about. The reason it's so low is that it's very close to the original. So I could maybe bump it one further, but I don't think it's better than Code Veronica because Code Veronica is a finished piece of music. Code Veronica is not
Agreed.
a garage band project that you've started and then saved and found 2 years later.
I feel so out of place here. On my own rankings, not only was this a B, it was the highest B. It was better than Resident Evil 1 Remake, Resident Evil 1, and Code Veronica in category B.
Wow. See, this is why we have 3 people on the show, though, so we can beat someone's opinion down into oblivion.
yeah.
I don't even know why I like it that much.
I don't think anybody does. It's why it's this overrated piece of music, as we've suggested. Jordan has obviously been in the comments with all the other YouTube
this is the thing.
YouTubers saying this is the greatest, most underrated theme ever.
Well, don't loop me in with those YouTube comments, because YouTube comments they'll be like, this gives you so much dread, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I like it.
Hey,
I'm like, well, this is Bob. Like, I can sort of like listen to this while I study, I guess, but like, I'm not gonna be like scared, sitting under my desk or whatever.
I wouldn't be too harsh on them now because they were all defending you in the comments until you said that. They were like, yeah, Jordan was flying the flag.
Come on, we can still do it. Be it here. We can still do it.
Let's move on. Maybe it will move around by the end. We'll see. We're going to jump ahead to a different generation now, or a different era of Resident Evil that often didn't have save room themes. So the only appearance of this sort of generation of Resident Evil is Resident Evil 4. Okay, I sincerely do not want to start with this one. Kelsey, how do you feel about the Resident Evil 4 save room theme? Not the results theme, it's a different thing. The save room theme, yeah, specifically.
So I didn't notice this until really recently. When I say recently, I mean yesterday when we were listening to them. This is actually really similar to RE0's save room theme.
Okay.
And again, that may pass you by, but just go back and have a listen to them one after the other. And for a long time, I've kind of rated this theme as pretty high. But it's taken a hit doing this list, and the similarity to 0 has really thrown me off. It has much more texture than 0, but kind of like Code Veronica, I'm a bit stunned that after 2 and 3 the save room themes really started to drop off, because it feels like they were such a staple of the series. And I feel like this isn't this is not like a nostalgia thing we all decided 20 years later. I remember being at school saying the save room theme is so good, everyone was praising the music in 2 and 3, and then Code Veronica and 4 save room themes iconicness just kind of went away. But yeah, I'm being kind of really critical. It does have that sense of breather with weird creepy sounds, so it's not like awful or anything, it's just not as strong as some of the heavy hitters for me. I mean, in Jordan's mind, like, this is not going to be touching Dead Aim. For me, it's a high B. It's taken a bit of a hit in doing this list, but I think I can comfortably put it around the B mark.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that kind of placement. Maybe an A or something. It is really strong. It's kind of funny because it's what we were talking about before, where it feels safe, and yet there is no better word for it, eerie at the same time. It's got this really bizarre tone to it that has never shown up in the series before, or even really since. It's incredibly unique. So I really have to give it props for that, because it hits all the save room tones and feelings in completely different ways, which I really like about it. Jordan, how do you feel about this one? Is this super nostalgic heavy?
It does have a lot of nostalgia, but I'm trying not to focus on that. I really had to try and channel that out, because obviously I do love Resident Evil 4. Who doesn't? Who doesn't, right? And I do have like a lot of attachment to the music from this game as well. And obviously the save theme for this stands out because not every area that you travel through in Resident Evil 4 has music. There are quieter sections or completely silent sections. Whenever you get to a save area, it really does feel like a kind of reprieve. But it's a weird one because like it is such an unsettling theme. Because it really does feel like something's very wrong. I put in my notes that this is food poisoning, the theme tune, because it just, I don't know, it just feels like there's something wrong. Yeah, it's queasy. That's exactly. And I think maybe that's sort of me sort of tying it into the effects of the story as well.
Right.
That, you know, Leon getting implanted with the egg later on and having to, you know, rid yourself of that. It obviously gives you that feeling of a tainted nature to this game. So it's a wash with that, and I think that's really strong. This is not a fun track to listen to, and while I do say it has a reprieve, it's not given that much relief as a theme in comparison to the series. But with all that said, I like it very much. I'm not much, despite the fact that I'm on a Resident Evil podcast and Resident Evil is primarily a horror series, I'm not much of a horror guy. I don't watch necessarily a lot of horror movies or anything like that, or really listen to a lot of horror music. But this stands out strong because I think it's such a good horror theme. You listen to it and it just leaves you feeling awful. And the other strong point that I give it is that it has a good swelling loop. Is the best way I could sort of describe it. Is that those strange swelling sounds that kind of go through the whole thing make the loop almost indistinguishable. You know when the theme starts again, but it's hard to really tell that the track is starting over, and so that's very effective. And yeah, just in general, I think it is a very strong theme. I gave it an A. And yeah, I'd say it's sort of lower A compared to some of the other things like Resident Evil 3. But yeah, I think that they hit the mark in the right place for what the tone was for the game and how you should feel in those save areas.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm happy to drop this in A then if we're all pretty much on that page. Give it its own little space. Cool. Excellent. All right. So jumping to the next era of Resident Evil, we have Resident Evil 7. All right. This is where the gloves come off for this one for me. This is the perfect set of sounds for Resident Evil 7's soundtrack. Like, if you're making a save room theme, the soundscape that they picked for this is so perfect for that game, which is instant, bonus points on top of the fact that as soon as you hear this play for the first time, you instantly go, this is the save room theme. It's recognisably a save room theme. It's almost like they transposed an old classic Resident Evil save room theme that we've forgotten about and went, right, here's a modern take on it with the instruments that they used. The effect that it has on you as a player, and hindsight's 2020. Old Resident Evil games aren't necessarily scary to any of us anymore because the way they've aged and the fact that we've played them so many times. RE7 is still scary because it's still quite a new game and it's got high fidelity graphics. So hearing this wash over you is the most relief you've ever experienced. I'm going to come right out and say it. Boop! This is number one. This is going right at the top for me. Jordan, how do you feel about RE7s?
Yeah, I love it. Because I was not necessarily that hot on Resident Evil 7 as a game. Maybe I was just kind of missing some of its, more unique sort of qualities. But this stands out as just an excellent save room theme. I think it is minimal in the best way. I think the banjo, for the very few notes that it has, does a lot of work. And it's incredibly effective, and there's a bit of emotion to it as well.
Right.
It's got a great sense of melancholy, and survival, and I was surprised that this was one that I ranked sort of so high, just because I think I kind of missed it more as an experience when I was playing the game, but. It is a big return to form for save room themes. The humming bass line complements it really well, and it has this sort of a very twisted respite. So it is excellent for a save room. You constantly sort of feel while you're listening to it that you have to be somewhere else. Like it's stay here as long as you like, but you have things to do. You have people to save. So this ended up being an A rating. It was a really high A rating. It is basically number 2 in my ranking. And it was very close to getting into S, but not quite.
Okay. Kelsey, what's your take on this?
Yeah, you've both hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. A bit like Dead Aim. Wait. RE7 has 2 noticeable pieces of music, and that's the intro theme and this save room theme. And luckily, in both cases, the music in this game is like a solar system better than Dead Aim's. And I've really come round to this. A bit similar to Jordan, RE7 I liked. I love as much as some people. I've definitely come round to it in more recent times, and certainly, but I always think that this piece of music was something that stopped me, and I thought, that is bloody fantastic. And it's just, it's off-key and broken and twisted and hopeless, and it fits the style of the Louisiana swamps and all that, and they nailed this one after some terrible save room themes or non-save room themes in a few games prior. Absolute return to form. It's like music from a bad dream, but in a good way. Top S rank, though, is where I slow your roll a little bit. I appreciate everything that's being said. This is top tier stuff. I did put highest A rank in my rankings, but I could be convinced to bump it up to S. But ahead of 2 and 3, ooh, I don't know. It's so close. I think you could possibly persuade me to go ahead of 2, which would kind of breaks my heart to even hear me say that. But
right, for sure.
Ahead of 3, I don't know. Oh my god, I don't know if we can do that. But fantastic theme, love it.
Yeah, I understand this is a really, really hard one, but it's always stuck with me since I played the game for the first time, as I think it has with a lot of people. I love Resident Evil 7, I make that very clear. And now it's been out 5 years or whatever at this point. It's had its time. I've had time to sit with it and figure it out. And listening to all of these back, it just struck me as like, this is probably my favourite. Taking nostalgia out completely with stuff like Resident Evil 2, which, like you, Kelsey, is my favourite game. I just think it's flawless. But yes, if it was my tier ranking, I've already said where it was B. This is not where it would be. This is not necessarily true of everyone else. Jordan, in that case, is there an argument for putting it in the middle of S rank, or would you put it at the bottom S rank or top of A?
I would put it at the bottom of S rank.
Okay.
And I'd be comfortable with that. Yeah.
Okay. I expected to come here with that opinion and everyone be like, no, get out. So I'm happy to put it in S rank, to be honest.
Yeah. Bottom of S rank is not a bad place to
Oh,
be in
no,
any stretch of the
absolutely.
imagination.
That's good company, that. 3, 2, and 7.
Exactly. Okay, cool. That takes us on to the last save room theme for this tier ranking, which is for Resident Evil Village. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting one, I think. This one, obviously, being the most recent one as well, makes it interesting because I guess there is such thing as recency bias, although I don't feel like I would have any of that towards this. In fact, I don't think we've ever really talked about this, the save room theme. I don't think it really had an effect on me other than, I guess that's that when I heard it the first time. Kelsey, how do you feel about Village's save room theme? Because I find it to be nice, but ultimately quite unmemorable.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning to be in line with that. I don't know if I'm imagining it. I listened to this a few times. This almost feels like it has references to lots of the save themes. And I know I've been listening to them all, but the harps are there. It has pianos in it as well. It's just all very distant. It's like they're underwater. They're very kind of hidden. But it feels like they're referencing loads of points in the series with this theme, which is quite clever and I quite like. But yeah, that didn't hit me at the time, and it's only through now and listening to it and kind of trying to get my analytical hat on, I hear those kind of things. And then even with that note, it still doesn't impact me in a way that the others do. I feel like this was a missed opportunity, but I don't know if it's just going over my head. Yeah, so it tries to do a similar thing that 7 did, which is be quite subtle but twisted and weird and yeah, really get inside your head. I don't think it achieves it in the way that 7 does, or at all really. But I don't know. But I'm not. This isn't D or C. I'm not crazy about it, but it has something going for it. And if I'm not imagining those weird reference points to the series, that's really kind of cool, and I think it wins some kind of points for it there. So it's yeah, I'm not sure where to rank it. I don't think it's C or D.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I didn't necessarily pick up on that. But and this is going to sound way harsher than I mean it to be, but what I got out of it is it's kind of like a Resident Evil save room theme by numbers. They went, here's a bit of soft piano, here's a bit of soft synth.
Yeah.
Hey presto, that'll do. Jordan, what's your feelings on Village's save room theme?
Well, I take the previous points that it could well be lending itself to references to lots of other save themes throughout the series, and I mean that would make sense for a lot of reasons. Chief among them being that I've heard a lot of people call Resident Evil 8, sort of a love letter to the rest of the series, a bit of a celebration of all things Resident Evil mishmashed together. Unfortunately, I don't have the kind of ear that picks up on all of those really subtle things, but I've seen plenty of comments that have time-stamped exactly where a lot of those references are.
Interesting.
So I'm certainly not going to dispute that they aren't there, but I just couldn't necessarily pick up on it. But I couldn't necessarily listen to it as a love letter to the rest of the series then in that way. I had to just listen to it as a theme, and as a theme I think it is quite weak. I think that there is just a little too much atmosphere that is sort of taking the focus of this rather than a melody, rather than much instrumentation. And so I don't actually think there's much of a theme to really go off. So while Resident Evil 0 felt like it was incomplete, I think this just feels entirely missing. It left me, longing for something that just wasn't there. So I'm quite harsh on this one. It gets a D. and it's not the very worst. It's like Resident Evil Zero was still dead last, but that's mainly because I felt that this was it was innocuous, really. While there wasn't actually that much that I could sort of pull from it, enjoy from it, it is relaxing, and I could probably fall asleep to this theme. Take that as you will.
And again, this might be because it's quite new, but I would argue maybe not the case, because a year out from Resident Evil 7, I would be able to immediately conjure it into my head. As we talk about this, I can't tell you how it goes. I can't even remember, any of it, because, as you said, there's not really any melody there to really hold on to. It starts with a little something and then just peters into this atmosphere thing. It's purposely, it's perfectly serviceable, but yeah, it's weak is definitely a word that I had written down. So I would argue that perhaps it probably does go in C somewhere. It's not awful, but it doesn't inspire anything out of me in particular.
Yeah, it's fine. I was trying, I don't really know what's going on with this one, and it's definitely been one of the harder ones for me to rank. I thought surely it's not that bad. I was trying to just excuse it.
But the thing is, it's not bad, but it's also not really anything.
No, it's not. And I think Jordan made great points, and for all those reasons why. So I'm not going to argue. Look at this C rank. It's ridiculous.
It's fine. We'll figure it out. It's all right.
Yeah, so I'm not going to argue a C.
Okay. So then the question is, where in this rabble does it reside? Is it... I would say... Oh, that's really tough. Between this and Zero is just tough enough, let alone anything else.
I really want to put it in D, but it just wouldn't be kind to Kelsey. He said so many nice things about it.
I didn't make it.
Is it better than Zero then?
I'm going to say yeah, because I'm hanging on to that point where, and I didn't realise that kind of other people had picked up on this being reference points to the series. I swear, I've never heard that, and it's just something I picked up last night, and I thought, am I imagining this because I've listened to all the themes today? But I could hear references to classic themes all over this, and I think it wins points for that. So definitely it's ahead of Zero. It's ahead of Remake 1 for me as well. Well, God, Dead Aim as well, is there? It's ahead of Dead Aim for me, but again, we can argue.
That's a tough one. I would put it between... I would actually put it exactly where Remake 1 is, but Remake 1 makes it more complicated. Jordan, how high would you be willing to put 8 for now?
I guess I would put it between Remake 1 and 0, since it is technically above 0 in my own personal ranking.
Okay.
But I still feel so bad for Remake 3. I mean... Were we too harsh on Remake 3, like halfway through this show?
Well, now comes the time where we get to ask that question. So let's go from the bottom to the top and see how we feel now that everything's in place and see if we want to move anything around. So, Remake 3 save room theme, is it better than Resident Evil Zero's? I would say no.
I would also say no. Like I said, it's a draft version of a piece of music.
Did I say yes 3 times so I outnumber you?
No, you cannot. So, related question then. Zero, is it enough of a jump that it goes in C, or is it? I think it might be the highest D.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can bump it down.
Yeah, that seems fair. Okay, well in that case, Zero, is it better than Village? I don't think so, but it's close. Close.
Yeah.
Is Village's save room theme better than Remake 1's save room theme?
No.
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 Okay. Remake 1 save room theme better than Dead Aim's save room theme?
Yeah.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, how the opinion has fallen.
I have to give it. After everything we've talked about Dead Aim, and I can't even pinpoint exactly why I even like it.
I mean,
That's kind of how I feel about 8, to be honest.
Yeah. Every time we do these, it's kind of tough because, opinion is just opinion. So trying to collectively put your opinions together to come out with these is tough enough. When it comes to music, it's a hell of a lot harder because it's all just, what you like. To that end, Remake 1. Better save room theme than Code Veronica? I'm still in the camp of no.
No.
I think it is. But there you go.
Code Veronica save room theme. Is it better than Remake 2?
Not for me.
Yeah. I would go with yeah. Whoop.
They tried. Code
Veronica save room theme. Is it enough that it can get jumped up to a B?
Not with those twinkly lights. Those twinkly notes. Yeah. No.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. All right. Sitting lone in the B tier. Resident Evil 1 save room theme. Is Code Veronica better than the original save room theme? That's a big fat no for me.
No.
Resident Evil 1 save room theme. Is it better than Resident Evil 4's?
No.
I don't think so.
Nostalgia aside, I'd say there's a big jump there.
I was going to say about Resident Evil 4 as well. You hear it like 700 times in the playthrough as well, so it really hammers home into your brain. And I think maybe that's why lots of people think it's better than it is. I think why I thought it's better than it was, but then 1, like we mentioned earlier, it's too soft. I don't want to go to sleep to these things. 4 deserves where it is.
The 4 is the merchant's theme as well. So, you got this weird, trippy, queasy theme, but you're thinking, "Whoa, I'm gonna go buy stuff. Oh, I'm gonna get the broken butterfly."
Okay, RE4 save room theme. Is it better than Resident Evil 7's?
No.
It's enough of a leap that 7 stays in S rank, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. Resident Evil 7 save room theme. Is it a better theme than Resident Evil 2's?
No.
Right,
no.
That's fine. That's okay. Resident Evil 2 save room theme. Is it better than Resident Evil 3 Nemesis?
Sadly, no, for me. I mean, I know Jordan, I think, said earlier that this was your top. And I want it to be my top. I want it to be, but I think I'd be lying to myself through bias. So I'm saying no. It still goes 2 and 3. But...
Oh no, that means it comes down to this. As I said when we were doing these ones, this is a really tough call between just these two. Obviously, my outright favourite is 7, but RE2 is, I would say, massively more iconic than Resident Evil 3's because that game had a wider reach more than anything.
It is. So here's where we can use the underrated thing. Maybe 3 is the truly most underrated one.
Well, if it's underrated, let's put it under 2.
It deserves to take its rightful ratedness.
I think that we should give it the tip of the cap. I think that it probably deserves. It is almost a case where if we could tie these things, it would be a no-brainer just to chicken out and be like, nah. But if we have to pick one, I think number 3, Resident Evil 3, should be
the photo finish.
The photo finish. There it is. There is the ranking of save room themes for the Resident Evil series from First Aid Spray, Tear Death Experience. So many people are angry and upset right now. We see you, Code Veronica stands. Sorry about that.
And the Dead Aim ones as well.
Well, they don't matter. On that note, let us know in the comments below how angry and upset you now are at this tier ranking. This tier is now available for everyone to do. And fill your own out as well. Let us know how different yours looks by sending it over to us on social media or heading over to our Discord server. All the links in the description, as usual. As with all of these things, we love to give our opinions and talk about these things, but even better than that, we love to see people's reaction to that and kind of counter-argument our thoughts. So it's always good to see. So thank you both for joining me for this rather interesting discussion on Resident Evil save room themes. Thank you for watching at home, and of course, Don't forget don't forget to subscribe. That's the one. And have a good week. That stays in. It's too late.